these initial questions, but it goes to who, in terms of the review being completed and being given. So I understand the review was given to the Attorney General. Is that correct? On the 18th of May.
Yes. So we've gone through this. So the cabinet decision commissioning the review was a decision that the report was to be received on behalf of the cabinet by the Prime Minister, but the Prime Minister also decided that the Attorney General should receive a copy so that the Attorney General could commence the process of considering the appropriate way forward, and that was on the 18th of May.
Okay, and so were other people given a copy of the report? Was the department given a copy of the report?
No.
So as far as you were concerned, there are only two people then that were given a copy of the report?
I believe so.
The Attorney General and the former Prime Minister?
Yeah.
And the officers of those cabinet, the Prime Minister and the
I
Attorney
can't,
General.
I know that the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister and the Attorney General received a copy of the report. In terms of how that document was subsequently handled within those offices, I can't tell you.
And in fact, to be precise, the Prime Minister was given a copy of the report by the expert panel and provided it to the Attorney General.
Yeah.
This is Prime Minister's turn.
No, Prime Minister's turn.
The then Prime Minister, we said, yeah.
So when Mr Morrison became Prime Minister, he was then given a copy of the report as the Prime Minister, as the incoming Prime Minister?
We went through this before, so he received obviously the incoming Prime Minister brief, and this topic was covered as part of that brief. I'm not sure whether Ms Foster's got anything to add to that.
So to indicate to Prime Minister Morrison that the former Prime Minister Turnbull had passed the report to the Attorney General for his action.
Yes, and the report was also then given to Prime Minister Morrison. Yes,
Senator, we did not. We believe the office would have done that. So we advised the Prime Minister that the former Prime Minister had been given a copy of the report and had passed it to the Attorney for action.
Right, but what do you believe in terms of Prime Minister? So Prime Minister Morrison now has a copy of the report, though?
He has said so publicly,
so
yes.
So you believe that it was the Prime Minister's office rather than the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet that would have forwarded the copy to Prime Minister Morrison?
Yes, that's my understanding, Senator.
Sorry. We've got a lot of Prime Ministers here. Is it your evidence, just so I can be clear, that you believe that it was not the department, but you believe Mr Turnbull's office who provided Mr Morrison with a copy of the report?
That's correct, Senator. There was some overlap in staff between the two offices, so it's not quite as clear-cut as...
It's not the department, to your knowledge, correct?
That's correct.
Has the department initiated an investigation into the leaking of the report?
Senator, the department has assured itself that all copies in our possession are accounted for.
Has the department initiated an investigation into the leaking of the report?
No, we haven't, Senator. We've assured ourselves that the department has accounted for all of its copies.
Minister Cormann, has there been any investigation initiated other than by the department into the leaking of the report?
No.
Are you and the department, what are your levels of concern about the leaking of the report? Why haven't you initiated an investigation?
Well, I'm not in a position to confirm that the report was indeed leaked. I mean, I haven't seen the report. I mean, I've seen... Well, you might think that's funny.
We have seen all the recommendations there in the Fairfax press.
You've seen media reports, that's true. I get that, and I've seen those reports.
Well, to be fair to you, Senator Cormann, you've just made an assertion. Is there an alternative explanation for the recommendations being in the public sphere?
I don't think the Minister made an assertion. He just said that he
didn't make an assertion at all. I said I haven't seen the actual report. I know that everybody assumes, but like in the end, there's a proper process, and in due course, the Cabinet will go through the final stages of that process and make some decisions. And when those decisions are made, we intend to release the report and the government's response to it.
But, Minister, I'm concerned about the fact that we have this report that's
you're concerned. You're concerned that
top secret report that only had like 2 people in the country, and then when we had the incoming Prime Minister, 3 people in the
really
country
concerned?
had a copy of it, and their officers had a copy of this report. It was leaked. It's on the front page of the paper. It's resulted in a change in government policy, and yet you're not.
So you're calling for? Are you calling for a leak inquiry, Senator Rice?
I think that, well, I'm asking you whether there should be an inquiry into the leak.
Well, I've indicated to you that the government has decided not to have such an inquiry, but I know that you think we should have an inquiry, and I'll pass that on and see whether that changes people's mind.
Senator Rice, if I may.
It's been very patronising.
Just quickly, Senator McAllister, because we went to Senator Rice for her bracket of questions, so I can come to Senator Stoker.
Is it correct, based on the evidence that you've provided today, Ms Foster, that at the time that these reports appeared in the public domain about the content of the Religious Freedom Report, only 3 members of the executive had a copy of this report, principally the Prime Minister, the Attorney General, and the former Prime Minister, Mr Turnbull?
Senator, all I can say with confidence is that the expert panel provided a copy to the former Prime Minister Turnbull, and that the Prime Minister said he had passed the report to the Attorney General. I can't know whether anyone else was provided with a copy.
Minister, is that your understanding, that on the 10th of October, when these matters first started appearing in the papers, it was only Mr Turnbull, Mr Morrison and Mr Porter who had a copy of this report?
Well, as I've indicated publicly a number of occasions now, the report was received by the then Prime Minister on the 18th of May, and I understood that the then Prime Minister made a decision that a copy of the report should also go to the Attorney General. I wasn't personally aware if or when Prime Minister Morrison received the report. I mean, I'm quite happy to take on notice the specifics around any such date.
We can assume he had a copy of it by the 10th of October.
Well, I'm happy to take on notice which precise day. I'm not going to make assumptions, but I'm happy to take that on notice.
Minister, are you concerned that it appears that members of the press gallery may have a full copy of the review and could choose to release it at any moment?
Well, I'm not going to express an opinion on that. I mean, we are all in the same profession. We all understand that from time to time, things go public before they're ready to go public. And, we believe that we are taking this report through a deliberative process of Cabinet on a confidential basis for the right reasons. And that is because in relation to an issue that has the potential to divide Australians, we are wanting to ensure that our response is appropriately balanced, appropriately calibrated, and assists in bringing Australians together. Now, having this sort of debate before you've had a chance to properly consider it in the public domain, obviously creates a very high risk that it polarizes where we should be bringing people together. And
well, it might have been best if it hadn't been leaked, but there's, as we understand it, 3 people who had a report, and it turns out it's in the public domain. And it's very clear who those 3 people were.
And Minister, I mean, given your desire to have a sensible, non-inflammatory debate on these issues, would not it, and given the leak has already occurred, and given that it appears that the press may indeed have a full copy of the report and could release it at any time, would not it be in the public interest to release the report at a timing, government timing, rather than when the press gallery could just decide to release it?
Well, and I've been asked precisely that question several times, I think, including by you in Senate question time. And my answer still stands. I mean, the government will continue to consider this through the proper deliberative process of Cabinet, and when we've made a decision on the appropriate way forward, we intend to release the report together with the government's decisions on the appropriate way forward. And as the Prime Minister has said on the public record, we expect that to be by the end of the year.
Aren't you more concerned about divisions in your own party room? That's why you haven't released it? That's why there's such a process?
No.
Well,
Senator
you
Ross.
obviously aren't talking to your colleagues.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, yes.
We'll move to Senator Stoker.